Let's get the party started.
Oh, baby!
When was the last time you shit your pants?
You think I'm a goddamn fool?
I shit my pants last night.
It's a beautiful planet. Well, it's a moon for sure.
I'm sick and tired of all this bullshit. Put that in your package, folks.
What's up, everybody? Josh from the Clearing Waivers Podcast coming at you for another episode of the Clearing Waivers Podcast. Hope everybody had a great week since the last time we saw you. We have another special guest this week. He's an old friend of the pod at this point. It's not Kitty yet. We have a third face on the screen at the moment. He is an official friend of the pod. He's a nerd. He's done a lot of work in the lab. Now he's part fly. Mr. Jeff Goldblum is with us. Jeff Goldblum, thanks for joining us. No, we got Craig Stout, formerly of Arrowhead Pride, now with Let It Fly Media, covering the Chiefs. Craig, thanks for joining us this week, man. We are excited to have you, excited to talk draft, and then you go and spring news on us.
I know.
Tell us what this is about here.
You lined up Kent Swanson last week on the day that we were announcing that we were leaving Arrowhead Pride, so that's fun. So naturally, you had me scheduled for after the draft to talk about it, and it was the day that we announced our partnership, KCSN, Kansas City Sports Network, partnered with Let It Fly Media, doing podcasts, daily newsletters. We're going to have film sessions. We're going to get player interviews. We're going to give you everything that you're used to out of Arrowhead Pride and more out of the three of us, partnering with Jeff Allen, Mike DeVito, BJ Kissel, Nick Leckey. Like, we're going to try and give you as much football knowledge as we have in our brains. And luckily, we have a lot of other people that know a lot more about football than we do, like Jeff and Mike, that can come in and pick up some of the tailing off that we have to do because we don't know everything. So it's going to be nice to have everybody in there, but should be fun. Should be. The goal is to just make everybody a little bit smarter of a football fan, and that's been our goal with the AP Lab all along. Now it's the KC Laboratory. So go find us out there. We're going to be on YouTube. You're going to get to see our beautiful faces for the first time since we've been doing that. So going to get to see that, and we'll be on all your usual podcast platforms and then KCSN on Substack. Go sign up. It is free right now. We have not released a whole lot of details about that, but you will get updates via email from that as it comes in. That's my spiel. I'm done. So we can move on to talking about the Chiefs now.
I dig it. You guys were always giving us great information now, and I feel like it's going to be kind of like you mentioned, kind of next level, having the guys that have been on the field, been immersed in professional football for as long as DeVito and Jeff Allen have. Seems like Jeff Allen at least always has something to say to kind of not only like entertain you, and he's a very entertaining guy, but he's also very insightful. So I'm very much looking forward to that marriage for sure. And then
I know what their podcast is going to be, what the podcast is going to be involving Jeff Allen, and I am more excited about that than anything that I am personally doing on the network.
That's
so
awesome.
yes, yeah.
Well, they were doing that cool thing with they just get like a player and just somebody random from their life. Like maybe it was a teammate in high school, or maybe it was their cousin, maybe somebody that knew them really well. They had some awesome stories on that podcast.
Yes.
So they've already churned out so much good content at Let It Fly. Very excited to see what you guys bring to the table. And even if it's just the same old stuff, I think I'll be all right with that.
Well, we're going to try and take it up that extra notch. If it's possible, we're going to try and take it up that extra notch.
I like it. Emerald Lagasse, right? You're going to bam it?
Bam.
That's a copyright thing. We should probably not say that.
Yeah.
But we wanted to touch base coming week after the NFL draft. Chiefs made some interesting choices, to say the least. I would say that the first two were awfully polarizing amongst Chiefs Kingdom, as well as your fellow co-pod hosts. I don't know.
I like that.
I don't know what the verbiage of that is going to be, but it was very polarizing. So we wanted to get in touch with you to see, we had Kent last week, kind of preview everything, kind of seeing what they might go after. And we obviously wanted to have you on to kind of help us, figure out where they're headed from here. This is what we did last year, where you told us Willie Gay was Derek Johnson. Not that we're trying to...
Listen, I said that the way he slips blocks is like Derek
Sure.
Johnson.
It's not what I heard,
I'm
Craig.
personally crediting you guys with the reason why everybody it comes to me and says, "Hey, listen, you said this guy was Derek. It's you guys' fault. I'm blaming you."
This is really what we're here to do, is stir the pot. We're not here to enlighten folks or make them smarter. If anything, we're here to muddy the waters. That's
Hey, I'm
really
here
what
for
we're
it.
here for.
Let's go.
It took DJ a while to become the player that he became.
Yep.
I mean, he didn't
It's
come
true.
out.
It did.
These guns
It did.
blazing.
Yeah.
We'll hope that Willie Gay's still on that track. Look forward to it. Still holding you to it. Feet to the flames. It's happening. But let's get into starting with the questions here. Kind of leading off with kind of going into the offseason, it was no secret that the Chiefs had this O-line problem. They had 2 holes in the tackle at least, and they needed a little bit more oomph in the middle, if you will, in the interior there. They went and made some free agent signings with Kyle Long and Nick Tooney. Yeah, not
That's
Nick
right.
Tooney, is it? Joe Tooney. There it
Joe
is.
Tooney.
Joe
You
Tooney.
got Thuney in your head, and
Yep.
and you got it all
And then
switched up.
I get it.
completely.
I get
this is
it.
what we're here. We're muddying the waters, guys. I tell you, we're not here to make people smarter like you guys. They signed Tooney. They signed Long. They signed the center
Blythe.
Austin Blythe.
Blythe. There it is. And then they made 2 picks in Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith. So they're out here actively trying to reclaim the term "build that wall" in front of Patrick Mahomes. So the question is, with the transformation of this offensive line seemingly being complete, how does this group compare to what they started out week 1 with last year?
Oh man, I do think that there's going to be some growing pains with this group. Obviously, it's a group of guys that's never played before. Tooney's a very smart kid. So is Creed Humphrey. I'm calling Tooney a kid. Tooney's a veteran.
He's a grown-ass man, Craig.
To me, they
Sure,
are
sure,
much
sure.
younger. But Orlando Brown Jr. I mean, even if it is Kyle Long over there, and let's call it Mike Rimmers, although I do think that Lucas Niang is going to get a fair shake at right tackle there, but let's call it Mike Rimmers just to ease that group into week 1 there.
Yeah.
I think that there's going to be some communication errors. I think that there's going to be some issues with passing some guys off. It's going to take a little while to grow. So no, I don't jump street, because that group in 2020, even with Niang's opt-out and LDT's opt-out, I think that you saw a group of guys that had at least been in the room together for a long time. So the communication was there. They were able to pass some guys off. Now, at the end of 2020, into the 2021 Super Bowl, it's no contest. It's going to be this group, because even if they go through the attrition that they went through last year, there is a significantly better second tier of offensive linemen in this group. And Brett Veach and Andy Reid and Andy Heck have made it a point to go out and spend lots of assets on this offensive line. They're getting a bunch of guys back from, COVID stuff. This is going to be a much deeper group. We're not going to be talking about a guy that was an emergency spot starter at right guard, now all of a sudden having to play right tackle because the right tackle that's in there as an emergency starter is moving to left tackle. Like, so many dominoes had to fall to get to where it is, to the point where I don't even know any Chiefs fans that are mad at players for how they played in the Super Bowl. Like, that was just an unenviable position for any of those guys to be in. It's not going to get there. Like, they're going to have even more attrition than they went through, and a historic attrition last year, to get to the point where they're starting that level of player in that level of game again. I'm just really anxious to see how quickly some of those rookies can come around, how quickly some of those veterans can get on the same page with each other, because I can see maybe a week 5, week 6 sort of come up where all of a sudden Clyde Edwards-Helaire is having a couple 150-yard games. Patrick Mahomes doesn't really feel any pressure. You're starting to get into that rhythm, because I do think that it will build. And obviously we know, even defensive guy me knows, that you got to keep the franchise upright. So as much as I'd like to pick on the fact that, they spent all this money and all these assets on the offensive line, you cannot argue about keeping the franchise upright. As long as Mahomes is upright, you got a chance to win the game regardless of what my defense does. So I'm more than happy to spend an abundance of draft picks and money and everything like that on the offensive line.
It sure seemed like a lot of the guys that they brought in and added had a lot of versatility and a lot of strengths in those versatile positions. It seemed like they are doing whatever it takes to make sure that they are not in the same position that they were walking in the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Joe Tooney can play both guard positions. He can play tackle. He can play center. He's played all those at an NFL level. Mike Rimmers, I mean, even if he's not playing right tackle, played left guard and actually played pretty decently at left guard and right tackle last year. Like, I know everybody remembers the left tackle snaps, but he was pretty decent at those other two. Niang has that right tackle length. Orlando Brown Jr. can play on either side. There's a whole lot of depth there and a whole lot of guys. Kyle Long can play right tackle. He was a Pro Bowl right tackle. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of depth, a whole lot of position switching that can happen and not having to worry about having such a significant step back. So, yeah, that's right. And here's the other part. Most of those guys are ridiculously durable.
Yeah.
Like, most of those guys haven't had huge injury seasons outside of Kyle Long, haven't had huge injury misses, and he took a year off to get his body healthy. So I
Boy,
do
does
think
it look
that
healthy.
oh yeah, it does. He looks lean and mean.
Oh.
So I'm really looking forward to having some durable. Like, I hope that we don't see Trey Smith and he is healthy enough to play this season. That's how good I want this group to be able to be on the field and play together, because I got high hopes for Trey Smith, and we'll get there. But I mean, it is a situation where I hope that they don't have to have that durability tested, but if they do, I feel a lot more comfortable this year.
Yep.
And I think all three of us in agreement. I think most of Chiefs Kingdom is in agreement with building this offensive line, like you said. Where if you're a defense, offense guy, whatever, protect 15 at all costs. Everyone's in agreement there. Let's get to the polarizing part that Josh referred to earlier. What's with that first pick? So I watch ESPN before the second day picks start. They go down the line with each of the guys. They say, who's your bang the table guy that you're saying, give me this guy? Desmond Howard says, our guy, Nick Bolton. He's banging the table to bring in Nick Bolton because that guy has a nose for the ball, hard hitter, tackle for Lost City. He's awesome. I'm getting pumped up thinking about it. The draft pick comes. I'm excited. Josh excited. Mizzou Nation excited. We turn on.
We heard bias coming out.
We turn on the AP Laboratory podcast, and the mood is not quite the same as what Josh and I are feeling, what Mizzou Nation's feeling. And the key phrase going around locally this week has been positional value, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we hear a lot about how the problem with the pick there at 58 is Nick Bolton is, quote unquote, a 2-down back. You can't count on him in coverage. So why are we spending a high second round pick on him? And so I just want you to let's raise spirits once again with the people that are knocking this pick down, because when you listen to the Brett Veach interview, he says, Nick Bolton staring at us in the face right there at 58, and we can't pass him up. Andy Reid refers to him as a no-brainer. Like, it wasn't a tough selection at all. He's a no-brainer at that point. So what do they see in him? How do they plan on using him to make him worth that 58th pick?
He's worth it from the standpoint of you can have your Mike linebacker on a rookie deal. Now, he may not ever be an elite coverage linebacker. I mean, his athletic testing certainly wasn't great, and his coverage reps, his man coverage reps, let me be specific here, his man coverage reps in college in the SEC that has good athletes, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't great. Now, every week he's going to be seeing guys of that quality, of that athletic ability. So Mizzou asked him to do a lot more zone hook drops. That makes perfect sense. You don't want to, put that guy out there and have him having to fight through something that he's not particularly good at, especially when you guys had Josh Bledsoe, Tyreek Gillespie, guys like that could kick down and be able to cover in man. So made perfect sense. From the Chiefs' perspective, they need a guy that can be relied on to call the defense after Anthony Hitchens moves on. Now, Anthony Hitchens not getting any younger. We all know the history with Anthony Hitchens. He did have his best year as a football player. I was getting ready to say as a Chiefs, but even with the Cowboys, best year as a football player this past year. But Anthony Hitchens is a guy that does the bulk of his work pre-snap. getting everybody lined up, getting everybody on the same page, sniffing out offensive concepts, and then trying to get guys to play quickly and get to the spots there. And when he's on the field, they look like a much different defense than when Ben Neiman, Darius Harris, guys like this that had to call the defense over the past 2 years looked. Nick Bolton's going to bring that same thing to you, except Nick Bolton's going to play behind the line of scrimmage. Like, he's going to be able to blow plays up behind the line of scrimmage. Anthony Hitchens may not be able to get there. Nick Bolton will. Now, I know I just said that he doesn't have great athletic ability, but he is explosive. And he does well to slip blocks and diagnose blocks, stack guys in the gap. He can play between the tackles very, very, very well. There was a reason why he was our linebacker 2 for a long time in the KC draft guide, and it wasn't because of his coverage ability. It's not like we turned on other games and went, oh, wow, he really can't cover. We knew that the coverage ability was lacking, and he was still way up there because he was such an elite run defender in the SEC. He has, like you said, a nose for the ball, plays behind the line of scrimmage. He's going to set up more 2nd and 12, 3rd and 10 situations because he's going to be able to get downhill and play that way. You need a guy like that. It's hard to come by guys like that. Guys like that don't stick around for very long. The NFL scoops them up, and especially in a situation like the Chiefs were in, where we know the New Orleans Saints, who also need a linebacker like that, were about to snap him up. They looked at their roster and said, we can move on from Anthony Hitchens next year. We can get a little bit better. We can play a little bit more behind the line of scrimmage while still having this high IQ guy. Yes, he may not have the elite coverage ability that we would hope for a Mike linebacker to have, but that's why we have Willie Gay. Like, he's got the athletic chops. He's got the ability to do that. So if we have this guy in the middle that's next to Willie and saying, hey, Willie, be on the lookout for this. This concept's coming, X, Y, Z. All of the sudden, that makes your entire defense better. You still get those negative plays. You still get the coverage ability out of Willie Gay. It makes some sense why they would go after a guy like that, because frankly, guys that have his IQ, his explosiveness, and coverage ability, we call them Devin Bush, and they go in the top 10. So it's hard to get a guy like that if you're the Chiefs. So I can get why, you know, if Brett Veach and Andy Reid are sitting there and Steve Spagnuolo sitting there at the end of round 2 and seeing Nick Bolton just continue to follow them, that they could just be like, listen, we're not going to get better at Mike, like, without trying to draft a kid, because we're not going to spend $18 million on a Mike linebacker. So let's hope that this kid falls. I think he's a better Anthony Hitchens, and that's why it makes some sense.
There you go, Josh.
I like it. I
Let's
mean,
raise
I
those
bring the
spirits.
optimism every
Raise
once
them
in a
up.
while.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't mention the words positional value once throughout that.
That's great.
You didn't, and we appreciate that. As Mizzou fans and as Chiefs fans, we appreciate you not digging too far into logic in that situation. in that scenario, I did hear on the Times Ours podcast, Nate Taylor was talking about potentially pre-draft. They were kind of targeting middle linebacker position, kind of coming up as a need. Everybody kind of knew that a linebacker was also a need, but it seemed like more people were focused on offensive line depth, the edge rush, and maybe, you know, secondarily, and the wide receiver too, obviously, is also in that. And then whatever else after that is gravy. It's totally fine. There was also that report where they were asking Nick Bolton about his conversation with the Chiefs, and he kind of gave him a little, you know, a little smirk, a little grin. So I wonder if this was all kind of not necessarily like him falling, but Chiefs and Brett Veach and Nick Bolton all kind of being on the same page. Like, you know, we think you're going to be there when we need you in the back of the second, and that's where we'd love to have you, type of thing.
I do think, because we know that they met with Bolton 3 times, I believe. So it's not like they were paying close attention to Nick Bolton there. They were paying close attention to a lot of guys. Zoom has made that a lot easier for them, just to be clear here. That's why we're not sitting here being like 3 times. That's something to pay attention to. They met with a lot of guys 3 times. But anyway, I do think that before the athletic testing, which was, again, not great, but before the athletic testing, I could have seen the Chiefs maybe taking him at 31.
Mhm.
Now, that would have been a much tougher pill for some people to swallow, because you basically would have gone, running back, linebacker with, consecutive, and then interior offensive line and Creed Humphrey with your first 2 picks of the draft for the past 2 years. And again, positional value, it's not ideal,
Not
but
ideal.
I do think that they've been interested in him all along, and it's because of that IQ. We know Spags wants those dents, meaning, big, thick, heavy, can play between the tackle linebackers that are super smart. And we know that Willie Gay is he's big and dense and athletic and all of that, but he had a little trouble picking up the playbook last year. If you listen to the pressers, you can kind of hear them talk about how he was one of the guys that really struggled not having an offseason last year. So that's their coding for, listen, we don't know that he knows where to be yet. So I do think that they think that Nick Bolton can come in immediately and play, though. So at the very worst, you have some insurance in sub packages that Nick Bolton can play until Willie Gay is ready, and then you get your athletic guy in there.
Oh yeah.
Very worst case, Nick Bolton's probably going to play 40 to 50% of the snaps, and that's pretty good. I mean, especially for a second round pick, that's really
late
good.
In the second round,
So,
yeah.
Oh yeah.
There was plenty of edge rushers and wide receivers, like we were talking before we started recording. There's plenty of guys there that could have been taken, and I think it would have been a universal, acceptance and cheering, a celebration.
Yeah.
But we at least are very in on the Nick Bolton pick. And speaking of super smart, maybe we always talk about, when everybody's zigging, you zag. Maybe Brett Veach, Andy Reid, they don't take your positional value, and they're zagging when everybody else is saying running backs or linebackers are not worth it. They're gonna zag. I don't know. That's tinfoil hat situation.
They're going
maybe,
heavy personnel. They're gonna force everybody into their base.
We said it with Kent. Maybe we're going back to Marty Ball. You
Bully
never
ball.
know. Yep. I mean,
oh yeah.
Why do you need a generational quarterback whenever you can just punch people in the mouth on a regular basis?
I'll tell you what, Kent would have an aneurysm if they went to bully ball with Patrick Mahomes playing quarterback.
Mahomes is a game manager now.
Oh no. Oh, he would lose his mind.
I think
I'm here for it. I kind of hope that happens.
Yeah, that would be fun, at least to see the chaos. Team Chaos. There it is.
Team Chaos.
What it did kind of prove, though, we asked Ken about not having a first rounder now, not having a third rounder now, and being stuck in the second with 2. Do they really approach that with best player available, or is it best player available at our biggest needs? And they kind of show we're going our favorite player, even if it's not an immediate need right now. We know we're going to need him down the line, and he's a really good football player. So that kind of answered the question after that. And I think you guys touched on that as well, as far as positional value goes. Everyone else kind of got a different value, positional value, compared to what the Chiefs do and what they do value.
Oh yeah. Brett Veach, we know he talks about his tiers all the time, and he does not put guys in positional value tiers. Like they're all lumped together. Like if he goes through and he puts a 90 grade on Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and it's right next to the 90 grade on Jalen Reagor and right next to the 90 grade on Cesar Ruiz, if they're all equivalent, positional value may factor in a little bit there, but he's also not going to try and reach for a guy in a tier below that, because he sees, oh, well, wait a minute, that's a running back. I don't need to take that in round 1. No, he's just going to take the running back because that's the best player on his board. We've now seen it time and time again. We've also seen him, not necessarily panic. Panic's not the right word, but seeing the end of the tier. Like he's got the group of guys and all but one are eliminated. He'll trade up for that.
Go up and get them. Yep.
Go up and get them. That's exactly what he'll do. So he definitely has a way of tiering those guys, and it completely ignores the positional value. I can't argue that Nick Bolton and Creed Humphrey are, weren't the best players on the board for there. Would I have spent a pick on Diami Brown and Joseph Osai? Absolutely. But I'm also not the one that's looking at it from the standpoint of these are the best 2 players. I don't care that they play linebacker and interior offensive line, because they're going to come in, they're going to play a lot year 1, and we're going to be able to move on from guys in the future. We don't care that wide receiver 2 and edge 2 are currently a little bit more unsettled than we liked. We'll try and fill those later. It's about taking the best guy on the board right now. A lot of NFL teams don't draft like that at all. Like they just simply do not draft like that at all. So it is a little bit of an adjustment when you're a Chiefs fan and you're looking at it, because it's easy to complain about that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you can go into the draft with a lot of your holes filled, it makes all the sense in the world to try and just catch as much value and then free yourself up to make moves later. So they just weren't able to fill a lot of those holes before they went into the draft this year.
Right.
Well, speaking of catching some kind of value, it seemed like they are taking a home run swing with Joshua Kando. Two words that we keep hearing outside of God, he's got such a great first name, is athletic and potential. And it seems like, the obvious one, raw, athletic, freak of nature. Everyone immediately goes, Tano Passanio. And everybody went there. I'm pretty sure Mel Kiper is the reason that everybody immediately goes there. Nobody talked about like athletic testing or the raw or relative athletic scoring that kind of went through. You guys mentioned a little bit that that's not even close to the right comparison between Kando and Passanio. So what can Chiefs fans realistically expect from Kando in the short term and also the long term?
Well, to address the Tano thing right up front here, Tano was a ridiculously athletic 290-pound man with freakishly low body fat. Like he was a monster in the way that very few 290-pound monsters are. That didn't mean that he was particularly explosive. It didn't mean that he was particularly fluid or flexible or any of the things that you kind of look for out of your edge rushers. He made a lot of sense as like a 3-4 defensive tackle or a sub-package rusher, which is kind of where he migrated by the end of his career in Kansas City. We'll see what they do with him in New Orleans. But he wasn't a guy that had played a ton of football, and it showed in some of his diagnosis and everything like that. Joshua Kando has played a lot of football. Joshua Kando was a stud defensive end coming out of high school. He was the #1 defensive end recruit in the nation. Bama wanted him, Clemson wanted him, Baylor wanted him, and he settled at Florida State. So he went to the only school that can't train defensive linemen how to be better defensive linemen. I don't know why he went there. I don't want to speculate or anything, but
it was every time you guys talked about Kando, you always mentioned the Florida State coaching, and I loved it.
Listen, they're so bad. Like, listen, Marvin Wilson was another guy. Janarius Robinson. These are all guys that went later on in the draft. Marvin Wilson didn't even get drafted, and he was the #3 overall recruit from that class. Like it's a situation where they just weren't able to get what they needed to out of those players. And so a lot of times when you see a group of those guys for consecutive years not really live up to their potential, you start figuring out why. The coaching staff is not putting him in the best chance to succeed. So he is a ridiculously athletic guy. He's got all the potential in the world. You're going to give him to Brendan Daly, who's one of the best defensive line coaches in the NFL, and you're going to put him in a room with Frank Clark, who is one of the best teachers on the field. Like, if you watch him at training camp, he will instruct he got more out of Breland Speaks in that training camp that I was there watching him than I saw out of Breland Speaks at any other point in time. So he's in good hands. Now, that being said,
I love that. Love those words.
Short term, he's probably not going to play. It's going to take a while because, like I said, he's not really put on a lot of good weight. He's not really developed too terribly much. He does not have a plan. The way that he wins is just pure athleticism right now. Like, he knows how to do the things, but he doesn't necessarily know why he's doing them. Like, he's not seeing an offensive tackle set a specific way and adjusting his pass rush based on the way that offensive tackle setting. He's just going to kind of hit him with whatever and see what happens. he's got to learn all that because that's going to matter in the NFL. He can't just win with that athleticism anymore. So I fully expect that we're going to see essentially a redshirt year out of Kando. Now, year 2, sky's the limit. If this kid figures that part out, can chain that stuff together, he's got one of the highest upsides of anybody in the class at defensive end. And the reason why people weren't talking about him in that way before the draft and why we had him as low as we did is because he just doesn't know what he's doing. It's pure athleticism and pure, he's just a raw a ball of clay that you've got to shape. So I do expect that he's in the best spot for us to get the most out of him as Chiefs fans. So I think that we'll see that, but I do think it'll be 2022, maybe even 2023 before we start seeing him be that guy. But once that happens, it might click over in such a way that we're talking about, okay, well, we're going to have to pay that guy 20 something million dollars because he's an elite pass rusher now. Like, I don't know that there's a gray area. I think it's pretty much he's figuring it out or he's not.
And really, next year is probably the more important year with the potential out of Frank Clark at that point. I'm willing to wait on that kind of upside. That, like you guys always talk about it on the AP Laboratory, or KC Laboratory, I should say. Check it out on all your local podcast channels. The home run swings versus the single swings, and I am very much in on anything past like second round seems to be a lot of home run swing taking, and I love the fact that they went after Kando in that capacity, because it does seem like, ball of clay, Spagnola kind of type of guy, learning from the right people. It all seems very, low expectations in the first year potentially. I think
for sure.
Very, very good recipe for future success in a guy that you take in the 4th round and hope it works out, type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I was condoning for Vanderbilt's Deo Odeyingbo, who actually went before the Chiefs' first, second-round pick. Obviously, the Colts got some really good medical information on him, but I was under the impression that the torn Achilles was going to keep him out for the majority of 2021. I condone for the Chiefs to take Deo Odeyingbo at the same pick that they took Joshua Kando. Kando's healthy, at least. Like, he's going to play. He's going to at least have the chance to be active. So I cannot hate at all taking the flyer on the guy.
Oh, yeah.
If it hits again, whoo, buddy, high ceiling.
Love it.
Another big thing that Chiefs fans were looking forward to adding this draft was another weapon offensively to give to Mahomes. And a lot of people wanted to go, wide receiver 2, take a swing there in the second round, Diami Brown types, whatever the may be. But it's kind of not a great hit rate on second and third round receivers. So there's a bust potential there as well. So I kind of like the approach of going after another athletic tight end. When you watch Noah Gray, it's impossible not to think of Travis Kelce. He wears 87, the same face mask at the top of his route. He does that same exaggerated shoulder shimmy to break off on his routes. I mean, he reminds me of Kelce so much. I know he's a little bit lighter in the britches. He's a little bit shorter, so we're not going to see him, line up exactly like Kelce. But it's also unlikely that we see them use him as a traditional tight end 2 in Andy Reid's offense, like a more hand in the ground, belldozer type guy. So I'm very curious to see how they're going to use this guy, because like you guys have said, he's not going to be brought in just to be a backup to Travis Kelce if Kelce goes down. They got to figure out ways to use him. I know people on the site and your podcast have mentioned a Kyle Juszczyk type role. I think he's probably the most famous guy that runs that role in the league that people know. And so I wonder how much we see him in that role, because I got to use him, right? They got to come with a different kind of approach here, freshen up their system, keep defenses on their heels a little bit. So give me some Noah Gray. What are we gonna see him doing?
Oh, we're gonna see him be just ridiculously handsome, though.
Yes.
I mean, like the
like
man.
that.
Listen, I'll tell you what, the Chiefs know how to draft handsome tight ends. But he does. He looks like Travis Kelce when he moves out there. That nuance at the top of the route that you're talking about with the shoulder shimmy and the head fakes and stuff like that. The way that he gets defenders to bite on that is absolutely uncanny. And Travis Kelce does that all the time. We see him juke defenders out of his shorts because he does stuff like that. Noah Gray is that same kind of route runner, like you said. A little smaller. He's not necessarily going to be able to stack a safety and shield him away from the ball or anything like that, but that's why you put him on the move, like a Juszczyk. You use him as that kind of fullback, H-back kind of role. Put him on the move. He's a willing blocker, not necessarily effective, but if you put him on the move, then he can put that, his explosion and his athleticism into the block a little bit more, and he does a little more damage. He can kick out a defensive end if he's got a head of steam.
Yep.
If you ask him to just kind of line up and do it, not much. But Andy Reid loves running those tight end screens. He loves running leak concepts. He loves running all kinds of misdirection. We've seen Travis Kelce get more and more integrated with like those shovel passes, the underhand stuff that Pat does with him. And, we've seen a lot of leak concepts that are based off of that motion in the past. Now, all of a sudden, you got two guys that you can do that with, and you can run them as kind of like mesh options with the leak, and with it gets so much more complex. And on top of that, he is going to be a better blocker than a wide receiver. So you could see some teams, now not all of them, but you could see some teams that like to go into their base when they see two tight end sets. You're going to put a linebacker on Noah Gray or a linebacker on Travis Kelce, and as we all know, that works out very poorly for the defense when that happens. So we're going to see probably an increased effectivity in the run game if defensive stay light, because you've got this guy that can kick defensive ends out and allow, Lucas Niang or Orlando Brown to climb to the second level and annihilate a linebacker. Or you get defenses that go a little more heavy, and now Noah Gray is a pass-catching weapon that you can use in all sorts of creative ways because he can move, he's good with the ball in his hands, and he's really slippery in the open field. Like, he makes a lot of guys miss in the open field too. He's an absolute steal. It was one of those situations that we did not expect Noah Gray to be there when he was. We projected him late third, early fourth-ish when we expected him to actually go off the board. So the fact that he was there in the fifth round and Brett Veach was able to get that split of the picks where he didn't actually give up a pick, he just moved up and moved back, basically. Being able to do that was such a big deal in this draft. I think we're going to be talking about Noah Gray this year a lot. I just think that they're going to use him a lot. He may not get volume touches, but the ones that he's going to get are going to be quality.
And we have an entire offseason to just steal Kyle Shanahan's plays.
Oh, absolutely.
How they use Kittle and him together.
Yeah, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Travis Kelce isn't going to have to run, 40 yards downfield on some of these routes because that's what the tight end's supposed to do. They give it to the kid. Let Travis catch a breather.
Yep.
I love it.
How dare you guys make me fall in love with Tommy Tremble, by the way.
I know.
Blindly, I don't know anything about Tommy Tremble going into the KC draft guide. This is your fault.
It is my fault. But
and
to be
fair,
fair,
fell in love, and then I was heartbroken.
Yeah. Tommy Tremble, better blocker than Noah Gray. Not as good as a pass catcher as Noah Gray. So we're basically, it's basically trading a little bit of the blocking. The reason we love Tommy Tremble is because you were going to allow Travis Kelce to do all the things that he could do as a move tight end. Now you're changing Kelce's role a little bit. That's fine. 6 of one, half dozen of the other. They're still two good weapons.
I sure wish Andy Reid could scheme plays. I tell you, that guy.
Boy, if he ever figures that out, he may have a future in this business.
I mean, I tell you what, he could be a Hall of Famer. Hall of Famer at this point.
Could be.
Let's talk a little bit about, we started to talk a little about adding weapons. We mentioned that wide receivers potentially a area of need going into the draft. A lot of mocks, a lot of people thought that maybe they would take some kind of wide receiver 2 type to fill the Sammy Watkins role. Veach did hint that there was maybe some potential free agent signings to be had on the market period, but looking at that wide receiver group is not super encouraging. Is the right maybe word.
Yeah.
So we got a lot of potential targets. Sammy Watkins was, when he was on the field, was a big deal. Where are those targets going? Is it going to be, Clyde Edwards-Helaire stepping up, McCole Hardman getting schemed into it, Cornell Powell getting drafted, Demarcus Robinson came back, Pringle, Tajay Sharp. I mean, they've got Antonio Galloway. They've got guys. Where are those options going? And what can we expect from the passing game to kind of make up for the fact that Sammy Watkins is a wide receiver 2 slot is not there anymore?
Yeah, that's the what was Sammy making last year? That's the $18 million question. I mean, that's right. That really is it. Which one of those guys is going to step up and claim it? I do think it's an open competition. I really do. I know that Brett Veach mentioned Antonio Callaway by name, and a lot of people got excited about that. Same with Byron Pringle, but then he made sure to go, we haven't seen these guys on the field yet. Like, we haven't seen what they look like on the field yet. We haven't done installs yet. I think that that's going to be a little bit difficult for some of those new guys to come in and be able to play, because we know that, like, it's not like a completely structured offense that nobody can do anything in, because obviously Demarcus Robinson is here. Within structure, Demarcus Robinson, not the best wide receiver in the world. Out of structure, really good.
Really good. Yep.
Really good. So I do think that he's going to get the first shot. I think Byron Pringle's going to get a shot as well. I think this is actually going to open up McCole Hardman to run a little bit more from the slot. Like, he's not going to be competing with Demarcus Robinson for some of those slot reps. I think we're going to see maybe a little bit more slot usage out of him. That could be good for him as well with his route tree and his development. I am very curious to see how quickly Cornell Powell picks up this playbook, though, because Cornell Powell has a lot of the hallmarks of an Andy Reid X receiver. He's a hell of a run blocker. Like, I mean, just an absolutely tenacious run blocker.
Deceivingly beefy. 6 foot tall,
deceivingly
210, I think is what it
beefy.
was.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, he's rocked
jacked.
up.
Thick
Yeah,
boy,
he is. Yeah. Contested catch guy. He's going to be able to shield guys out. He's got long arms and good, huge hands, 10-inch hands, just an absolute vacuum at the X receiver. Not going to take the top off of the defense. And Andy Reid was really that guy. I mean, Jeremy Maclin had some vertical ability, but he's not. People don't think of him traditionally as a burner, I guess I should say. He still had plenty of speed,
fair,
but
for sure.
But Powell is going to be kind of like a Jason Avant type, be able to work underneath, route guys up, because he does have good route running ability. It's just he doesn't have that high-end athleticism. If he picks up that playbook quickly, though, like, you're going to see that guy on the field because he does all the little things right.
Yeah.
And he's also cocky as shit. I love that about him. I absolutely do. This man will yap. He will get in cornerbacks' heads. Like, we saw him at the Senior Bowl when we went down to Mobile, and he was just destroying cornerbacks and letting them know about it the entire way back to the huddle. Like, they're jogging back down the sidelines, and he just pivoted, looking directly into the ear hole of the cornerback, and the cornerback's just shaking his head with his head down, like, just the entire way back. He has a dog mentality.
Love it.
He's a Kansas City wide receiver through and through. So if he gets on the field early, I think it's going to be hard to keep him off, just because of all of those little things that he does, and the impact that he makes is going to be so big. But I don't think he's going to get first shake. I do think it's going to be Robinson. I think they're going to try and get Pringle on the field. It's just, if he takes it, I don't know that he's giving it back.
You got to like to hear that.
Yeah.
So the 6th round rolls around, and I'm seeing Chiefs are coming up. Best players available. I see scrolling. I see Trey Smith sitting there. David Moore out of Grambling, which you guys said really showed out at the Senior Bowl. I see those guys showing out, and I say, let's just continue putting huge human beings on this offensive line. And sure enough, Trey Smith comes up. I'm thrilled because, like you were talking about earlier, this was a recruit everyone was talking about coming out of high school. And so I'm sure when you're recruited like that for every college in the country that wants to have you, it's got to be humbling when the NFL draft finally comes and you're sitting there in the 6th round. And he, in his interview, he's talking about being undrafted and having to accept that. And so, I mean, that's got to be a crazy feeling for him. So let us know why he dropped like that and why he still has that serious potential to be a super impact player, because people are talking about him being possibly the steal of this draft.
Oh, absolutely. He was the number 1 overall recruit in the same class that Kendo was the number 3 overall one. So the Chiefs just went out there and just went, listen, we really liked this high school recruiting class. We're going to go ahead and draft him.
Go ahead and invest heavily in it.
Yeah. Trey Smith, 2 years ago, had blood clots in his lungs, and he was having to take a bunch of medication, and he couldn't practice. He practiced twice all year that year.
Man.
So roll around to this next year. Tennessee worked on his medication, tried to, work with him to figure out a way to make that better. And they were able to get to the point where he was able to do some practices during the year, and they felt like things were pretty good. But once again, they were worried about him because he was taking blood thinners, that if he got a concussion, that he would then, bad things would happen on the
Bad
field.
things.
So, yeah, bad things. But the cocktail of medications that they basically had come up with right there at the end at Tennessee was something that was working, wasn't putting him at the same sort of risk that he was with some of the other stuff beforehand. And the Chiefs medical staff has been working really close with Tennessee's medical staff to figure that stuff out and get that kind of translated over. His hope is that he's full go. And if he's full go, there's zero reason why he shouldn't be the right guard, the starting right guard in 2022, after a year to learn the system. Now, not only is he potentially the starting right guard, we comped him to Kelechi Osemele for good reason, because he plays exactly like Kelechi Osemele. He is an absolute mauler. He will blow gaps open, and he is a finisher. Now, he wasn't able to move particularly well over the last 2 years, but some of that's because he was struggling to breathe. So there's a lot of questions about him
You
from
need to breathe in order to move.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah, I know,
I've always
especially-
been able to move and not breathe ever.
Yeah, well, you and I are not trying to play right guard for Patrick Mahomes, though. That's
That's
the
a valid
part of
point.
that.
I think that's very valid.
But yeah, no, it's a situation where if his medical's clear, he's absolutely the steal of the draft. It's just teams had to feel very comfortable with it, and it took to that point. And Brett Veach knew that was his guy. That's why he did the split with the Noah Gray picks. He knew that was the 6th round pick. Like, we got to keep this spot here. We can't let somebody else just take a late round flyer and try and get this guy in house. They believe that they've figured something out and that they could catch him that late. Now, let's say he gets in the building and things aren't going great. It was just a 6th round pick, and it is a gamble that's worth taking. Trey Smith has a huge chip on his shoulder now. Obviously, you know, he had round 1 bust coming into this year. Let's just be frank. Like, he could have gone round 1 if he was fully healthy. He wasn't. This is kind of like the Maurice Hurst situation from a couple of years back, where he had the heart condition and he fell to late day 3, and he's been good in the NFL since. So the hope is that Trey Smith has his medicals figured out and everything like that, just for the player himself, whether or not he was a Chief, just for the player himself. But if he clicks for the Chiefs, now you're talking about Niang, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith on the right side with Orlando Brown Jr. and Joe Tooney, and that's 4 years of those 5 that you can basically count on being linchpins of your offensive line. It will help offset some of the cost of paying Joe
100%.
Tooney and Orlando Brown, because you got 3 other rookie deals. Now all of a sudden we're talking about this surplus of money that we've got, and you can spend on other positions, and Patrick Mahomes is protected. Like, it's a win-win-win situation for Trey Smith. I'm glad he got drafted. I'm glad he's on this team. I hope the medicals are good, because I'm pulling for the kid. He's such a good dude too. So I'm really pulling for him.
Seems like he is absolutely one that plays angry, and I am very into that idea.
Oh yes.
Do not let Patrick Mahomes hit the ground, and I'm very much into however you play. I don't care how it is.
Absolutely.
I love to watch people play angry, but whatever you need to do, just make sure Patrick Mahomes is not on the ground. This is usually the time where we go a little bit lighter. We have a little shenanigan, little poke heavy, let's have a little fun type of thing. But Craig, being a laboratory employee as you've been for the last few years, you've done a couple, you're very familiar with lab rats, correct? You've done.
Yes, I have been one from time to time. Yes.
Okay. So we are going to have you test out a new shenanigan that we're going to call Goldilocks and the 3 takes, if you will. So everybody knows about Goldilocks, porridge and what have you. Too hot, too cold, and just right. We've both got 3 takes centered around this draft. I'm going to need you to tell us if this take is too hot, too cold, or just right. So
love it.
Did you happen to dye your hair just out of curiosity?
No, I mean, I could if you wanted me to. I could go get this blonde,
It's more
just the
like
beard,
auburn locks in the three
auburn
takes.
locks, red
I like that.
locks,
Yeah.
ginger locks. Yeah,
We're pro ginger on this podcast, just so
hey,
you know.
that's good.
We
That's good.
appreciate
I'm
you.
glad.
Clearly.
So right out of the gate, Brian, I'm gonna have you started off with your first take of this draft. Go.
Hot take number one. Trevor Lawrence's career will be like Matthew Stafford. All the tools, career QB1, that's not question, put up huge numbers, but he'll never win enough games to be considered one of the best in the league.
I think that's just right. And I actually like what Jacksonville is building down there, but man, it's just really, really hard to turn around a franchise that significantly. They're putting a lot on him with the offensive line that he's working with. I feel like they're trying to build something. I mean, I feel like of those two situations, because when the Lions drafted Stafford, like I mean that was a signal from a mile away. I was like,
Yeah.
well, he's good, but yikes. I think that they've got a better chance to turn it around than that Lions team did, but I do think that that's just right. I could see it failing for sure.
Interesting. Okay. So Brian got it just right out of the gate. It's a good start. It's a good start. My first, the Chiefs drafted 2 Pro Bowlers in this class, 2 different Pro Bowlers.
Oh, I'm gonna say oh man, I'm gonna say that's too hot.
Too hot.
I am gonna say that's too hot, and I think that they got one, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's Creed Humphrey.
Yeah.
I think he's gonna play for a long time, and I think he's gonna catch a Pro Bowl at some point. I think Bolton is going to be a good player, but with linebackers getting faster, more coverage oriented, I don't know that he's gonna have the coverage stats to really gain, a Pro Bowl nod at any point. That's not saying that he's not going to play to a really high level. I just think that he'll get overlooked. And then after that, you're banking on a lot of day 3 guys. And
Yep.
while I could see one of those guys slipping in there, I love the day 3 class. I don't think that it's going to be more than one. So I'm going to say that's just a tinge too hot.
All right. I'd rather have it
Take
too
one.
hot than too cold.
Take one. All right, hot take number 2. Quarterback prospects should not be labeled generational talents when they're going to play in the same generation as Patrick Mahomes.
Too cold, way too cold. It needs to be way scorching hotter than that. Don't even mention generational quarterbacks for another 20 years after Patrick Mahomes. This is the best player to ever play the game ever. I am not listen, Tom Brady's the GOAT. Patrick Mahomes will be there before it's all said and done. I fully resolutely believe that. So I hate the word generational to begin with. I really do. And I use it on occasion and then I cringe in my head when I say it. But I hate it when people use the words generational quarterback. Trevor Lawrence is awesome. Trevor Lawrence is going to be good. Trevor Lawrence is not going to be Patrick Mahomes. There's only one Patrick Mahomes. He is the guy.
That's what I want to hear.
I like it. I like that a lot. All right. My next one, Creed Humphrey. Spoke about him a little bit so far. He's going to see 90% of the offensive snaps in 2021. 90%.
I think that's just right. I really do think that that's just right. Creed Humphrey is very sturdy. Doesn't miss a lot of time. He's played a lot of games. He's a very smart guy that called protections for several different quarterbacks under Lincoln Riley's complicated Oklahoma offense. So I do think that he is uniquely equipped to come in day 1 and call protections. It's not always going to be pretty. I do think that he's going to struggle with power a little bit with some of the more powerful nose tackles that are coming up, but I think he's going to be the guy day 1. I think he's going to call protections, because why not get him integrated early if, it's not like Austin Blythe is some shining beacon of center play here. It's not like they've got a stud that's already in-house. Get the rookie in the game early. Improve that communication between him and Patrick Mahomes. So yeah, no, that's just right. I think that's right about where they'll play.
Tie ball game, Ryan. What do you got?
Final take. The biggest waste of a talent among the first round draft picks was Rashad Bateman, because the Ravens already have Hollywood Brown, Sammy Watkins, and oh yes, their passing game stinks.
I mean, that's about right. I hate to say it. That's about right. I mean, listen, that's like adding it's like adding quarterbacks to the Chiefs roster. It's like what are you going to use them? Like I get it. Lamar is trying to improve that sort of thing, and I really like Rashad Bateman. I really like Rashad Bateman.
100%.
I just don't get spending that high of a pick on a weapon for him at this point. They've got a ton of excellent tight ends that he uses really well and play really well in Greg Roman's scheme that utilizes tight ends ridiculously well. He just doesn't maximize wide receivers like ever. So now you're spending another high pick on another wide receiver that you're not going to maximize. It's a waste to me. I'll tell you what, Rashad Bateman should just come to Kansas City.
Yep.
And we'll take good care of him.
That's fair.
That's
We can give them Ben Neiman.
Absolutely. I
Straight
love
up.
that. I love that trade. Straight up.
I think that's dumb for them to pass that up. That's when best player available goes wrong. Is what that is.
That's right.
It's true. What that is. All right, my final pick. We got a 2-1 game here. There we go.
Okay.
This 2021 draft class is going to be Brett Veach's best collective draft class that he's had so far from 2018 to 2021.
I'm gonna tie it up. I think that's just right. I do. And I think it's entirely because I think the stabs that they took in day 3 are very worthwhile.
Yeah.
Like if any of those guys doesn't work out, I'm happy with the picks. Like I can't always say that about the swings that they've taken late in the draft. There's been a lot of guys that have been like, all right, well, that's a thing that you did, and we'll see how it works out. Like I absolutely love day 3 of this draft. And again, like I said, I think Creed Humphrey is going to start for the entirety of his rookie career. And I think that you've got a Mike linebacker, the future, and Nick Bolton. So in that regard, if you get one of those day 3 guys to really hit in a big way, and I think that that's where the big potential is in day 3, like if Kane Doe turns out to be a starting defensive end for you, slam dunk, easy best draft for Brett Veach here, because those first 2 picks, very safe picks. They're going to play a lot. So you've got the floor already. Now the ceiling comes in day 3. So yeah, I think that that's an easy, I think that's about right for the
which
take.
I think that's saying quite a bit. 18 and 19 draft classes were pretty meh. I mean, they did have some good picks in there, but that 2020 class with CEH, Willie Gay, Yang, Snead, Mike Dana, and Bo Pete Keys, I mean, you got 4 genuine starters out of that group. So I
you
feel
hope.
Like, right.
Yeah.
You think that 2021 is better? I think that's saying a lot. I'm very in on that.
I think Willie Gay's got to get on the field in a big way. He can definitely take that as the high upside pick there. Lucas Niang's got to get on the field in a big way as well. After that, there's nothing really. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be what he's going to be, and I think he's going to have a really good year behind this offensive line. So I'm not trying to say that that's a bad pick by any means, but it is
additional value.
Yeah, it is a running back. So I mean, yeah, but yeah, no, I do really like that draft class. L'Jarius Sneed obviously is the biggest blue chip player that Brett Veach has had yet, and Joshua Kando could overtake him if he gets to see him. So I'm just saying, Brett Veach knows what he's doing in the 4th round, apparently.
See, here we are. Last time you came on after a draft, you made me fall in love with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, see what he's going to do to this offense. Then you give me Willie Gay, tell me it's Derek Johnson. Now it's Joshua Kando, not only having the best damn first name in all of mankind, but now he's going to be better than L'Jarius Sneed. What are you doing to me, Craig?
I
have a high blood pressure as it is. What are you doing to me?
Man. Listen, everything's all sunshine and rainbows for me right now. I can't be mad. You can't
100%.
get me mad right now. So yeah, I'm just all on board with everything that's happening right now.
Would you say that you're letting it fly?
I might be letting it fly just
Let
a
it
little
fly.
bit.
Let it fly just a little bit. Well, we had another blast with you, Craig. Every time you come on, you always bring your great information, but I feel like, you know, the energy that you bring to us is always very good. You're always very enlightening. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us again this time. Everybody listening to this podcast right now, if you enjoy what Craig has to say or just want to hear the great coverage that he's able to provide, go check him out at Barley Hop on Twitter. Always great takes on there. And then go check out the KC Laboratory.
Always?
Every
Always.
time. Not many people have 100% like a batting average of 100. Craig Stout, 100 hitter right now.
You're full of shit, Josh.
Well, I mean, we like to butter a little bread while we get in here, but we genuinely think that that you guys know what you're talking about for the most part. Compared to us, I mean, I called Nick Thune or Nick Toon. Who knows where I'm at?
Nick Jonas.
Who knows where I'm? Nick Jonas.
Yeah.
Scott Jonas is on the
Scott
new
Jonas.
edge from the six. No, but we always appreciate you having it, Craig. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us once again. We will see you next time, man. We really appreciate it.
Hey, pleasure's all mine, guys. Love coming on. Love talking with you guys.
Thanks again to Craig for joining us for that great interview. We really appreciate it. We're going to get to some Royals talk. We're through Royals review. It's time to talk Royals. It's not going to be the highlight of this episode, but we've got about 3 months coming of pure Royals goodness coming right now. But we've got some takeaways. Royals are in first place in the division. Really good standing in the American League. Still flirting with the best record in baseball, meeting with the Indians again tonight. I think it's been a tie game last I saw with some kind of sloppy play going on in that game tonight. But hopefully we'll see the boys blue pull it out at the end. But we've got some takeaways from the last few weeks, what we've been kind of seeing. We've got some hashtag analysis coming forward. So, Kitty, haven't heard from you at all this episode. We're starting with you. You're leading us off, baby.
Oh, boy.
You're
How
Whit
about it?
Merrifield right now. What's the big takeaway that you're kind of bringing to the table for the Royals and what they've kind of shown you this last 2 weeks?
Well, it's kind of the bullpen sort of starting to work itself out, where guys are getting into their roles a little more. Because kind of, I think we all thought at the beginning of the year was kind of a free for all for some of those positions, and the biggest question mark was it going to be one of the super old dudes, or some call them veterans, to be a reliever or
It's
be
a
the
big
closer?
distinction.
To be the closer, or one of the younger guys step up, and it looks like we got one to step up, and that's Stalmont with 3 saves so far, mostly in I believe all 3 in the last 2 weeks. So looks like we've got a new closer, and he's coming out of the gates firing and looking good doing it. So
Firing is the key word there. Throwing
Exciting.
absolute gas.
yeah,
And
I think
he's not even hitting
He's
his 103s or anything yet. But I
Right.
feel like it's
No.
going to come when he builds his strength back up.
exactly. Yeah, so I mean, he's not even at where he was last year, where he was getting those triple-digit readings on the radar gun basically every time he pitched. So
Yep.
looking forward to that coming forward down. But nice thing. So without the 100, maybe he's got slightly more command this year with his pitches, possibly. Don't know if that's the full thing, but he's down to 3.8 walks per 9, which is always nice to lower
Yep.
that walk from 5.5 or 5.6. And the nice number is the 2.5 hits per 9 so far. That is nice.
That'll do.
Mhm.
I mean, leads you to your whip is below 0.7, you're doing something good on the mound. So
Mhm.
it's nice to see that. ERA 0.63 as well. And so he's getting it done, and I like to see it. And it's, even if it's a little smoke and mirrors, it's got to help a guy's confidence to know to be pitching this well as early, come out of the gates, and even with a new role for himself at the major league level, to be getting it done early.
Mhm.
Like those confidence builders for some of the guys that don't have a lot of service time in the bigs.
Right.
Mhm.
And we kind of talked about it in the past where we thought Stalmont was the most giftable pitcher, the most likely to end up on like pitching or a pitcher list or a pitching ninja gif. So it's good to see that, he's able to put that success together, like Brian said, without that 103 mile an hour hitting. He's still striking dudes out, still keeping, his walk rate in a reasonable area. But like Kitty said, not giving up hits is a big deal in those late high leverage situations. Very into that. His K rate is still very good. Not what you're kind of used to seeing. He's only got an 8.16 K per nine going on. Still very good. I mean, don't get me wrong. That's still very good. Still averaging, I think there's only been 2-3 outings maybe where he didn't record a strikeout in his work. So I think you're still going to get those nasty pitches. It's good to see that he's still finding success, even though he's not necessarily striking out everybody he sees like he was last year.
Right. Yeah. It's nice to maintain success when you're not up at that 13 strikeouts per nine, where you're actually balls are getting put in play a little more, but they're getting in. Obviously, it's been some weaker contact because they're not getting hits off him. So it's just great to see maybe a little bit of progress out of him as a pitcher, maybe a little more development.
Last year he had a 12.97 K per nine, but a 5.61 walks per nine. So I'm totally okay with him bringing that K rate down as long as his walks are also coming down. I think that's a big step. And like you said, consistency, straining in good appearances every time he gets out on the mound. I think that's a big deal. So I'm into it. I love that Josh Staumont closer role. Brian, what's your big takeaway for the last couple of weeks?
Let's talk about consistency here, because my call is Danny Duffy is a huge reason this team's been winning as much as they have, and he's not getting enough credit for it, honestly. He's been nails all 5 of his starts, and I know it's easy to say 5 starts, how does he have that much impact on the rest of the games? But we've seen every other starter have a rocky start here or there along the way so far. No one's had good games in all their appearances. And when you add those up back to back and you have to go to a bullpen really early in the game and that stacks up, if that keeps going and Danny Duffy is not who he has been and been the stabilizer for this team, this ship could have been capsized and all this rocking around. And when you have a guy like, he's been the ace of this staff, and coming this season, no one expected him to be the ace of this staff. And when I say that by ace of the staff, I don't mean he's just the best pitcher that's going to win almost every time he goes out. He's also the pitcher that you can count on to give you the innings so your bullpen can get a break and get back in the reset out there. And not, the more you use the bullpens, the more you have to rely on the bottoms of your bullpens. And so when you get a big reset day with Duffy, when you go to him and say, hey, we need 6 out of you, and he can give you 6 or 7 innings, and that's exactly what he's given in all 5 of his starts. He's got a 0.60 ERA, 0.97 WHIP, 34 Ks and 30 innings pitched. He's been huge for this team, and he's just kind of kept his head down, kept his mouth shut, just went about his business and been the veteran that we kind of thought that Mike Minor was going to be, or we kind of thought that, we all just assumed Keller was going to be the Clydesdale like he's shown all before, and Lynn told us to pump the brakes on that. I still blame Lynn. Lynn, it's all your fault. Keller fell apart. He's going to come back. I still got faith in Keller. But what Duffy's done and what he's meant to this team so far is, I think it's been very understated. When you look at the numbers, looking at his in and out of the zone is very similar to the rest of his career, but the big difference this year has been an uptick in his whiff percentage. He's a career 24% whiff percentage guy, and this year he's been 30.2% whiff, and that's a big deal when you get guys that swing and miss, and you got swing and miss stuff, because he's really kind of working with the same stuff he's had his whole career, working in and out of the zone. He's really using the top of that zone with his fastball well and not making huge mistakes there and turning into huge runs. So, I mean, no one expects this to continue with the ridiculous ERA and the whip. It's going to come back to normalize a little bit, but what he's done to start this year with how rocky the starting pitching staff's been is just exactly what you want out of your veteran guy. So I think he's been huge and just needs to get more credit.
It is very interesting that he hasn't really added anything, but he is in the 70th percentile on whiff percentage. He's in the 72nd percentile on chase rate, 74th percentile on K percentage. I mean, that's not what anybody expected in a Danny Duffy this year.
Right. And I think part of that's attributed to kind of how the league's moving. A lot of more guys are swinging for the fences. The batting averages are way down across the league. Strikeouts are up as always. Home runs, they're all going for the big bombs. And I think maybe he's kind of taking advantage of that approach, realizing that that's what they're doing and maybe attacking them maybe a little bit differently. But whatever it is, it's working. Keep doing your thing. Bury him a Royal. Let's go.
I'm into it. Danny Duffy, you're the man. I love you.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. The rest of the rotation has been a disappointment, to say the least.
Uh-huh.
So outside of Singer's been good, but then
Yep.
just the other three guys that we were kind of counting on for some consistency of that, or the other two at least for sure, with Keller and Miner. It's just frustrating to go out there and watch those guys struggle as mightily as they have, as with expectations coming in. So Duffy has definitely been that. You always want that stopper, as they say in the rotation.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Put the stop
That's
to a losing
usually
streak.
the
Put the
ace.
stop to exactly. Put the stop to bullpen getting out of whack. So
Yep.
it's been nice. Been nice to see.
And it wouldn't be the worst thing. We kind of mentioned about the Stamont as far as like defined roles. Stamont kind of eventually went and grabbed that closer role at the moment. I mean, that could change tonight. It could change tonight. I think he did pitch 21 pitches last night, so maybe not tonight. But you know what I'm saying? Like it's a fluid situation, it's ever evolving. The Danny Duffy could be the ace for the first month, and then Mike Miner turns it on, and then Brady Singer comes around, and then it just kind of the torch kind of gets passed whenever you don't have the guy, you don't have the Scherzers, you don't have the guys that are the established starting pitcher ones in your staff. You kind of pass the torch and kind of help each other out in that situation, being that stopper. So I'm very interested in that situation moving forward, but I am very happy that Danny Duffy's the guy right now.
Yep.
I'm going to stick with the pitching staff. We've talked two pitchers, and we kind of came up with our takeaways solely without really consulting each other. We should probably talk a little bit closer next time. We'll see how it goes. Maybe some of these batters, cough, cough, Andrew Benintendi, Carlos Santana need to get some love as well. But I'm also going to stick with the starting pitching rotation. There was an MLB debut last night with Daniel Lynch, one of probably the best pitching prospect in the Royals organization. A very deep pitching class, I think, is across the board. Daniel Lynch debuted last night against the Indians. My prediction going in, I thought it was going to be a pretty typical, debut from a rookie. My prediction was 5 1/3 with 3 hits, 3 earned, 4 walks, 6 Ks, and 87 pitches. He actually went 4 2/3 with 4 hits, 3 earned, 4 walks, 3 Ks on 74 pitches. I think there was a pretty fine line in between, the pitch count, how many walks he had. There was a couple different jams that he got himself into, got out of most of them, but he wasn't able to get out of that last one before they pulled him at 74. So I think that, I would label that as a pretty typical prospect debut. I think I don't think the bar was super high. I think we wanted to see him go 8 strong, unearned, untouched with 12 Ks. But I don't think anybody had that as a reasonable explanation or expectation at this point. But didn't go deep. It's fine. He had 7 swings and misses, which is fine. I think that he was, potentially expecting more from that. But, debut and all, emotions are running high. I think that's the big takeaway from last night is being able to contain those emotions and throw strikes. He did that sometimes. He didn't at others. So I think that's always going to be the knock against him. But I think the dynamic early in his career is going to be his awesome stuff that he's got versus the controlled command that he has each and every night. That's the tail of the tape. That's the name of the game for any of these pitching prospects at this point. When they first come into the league, are you going to be able to figure out how to control your stuff against major league bats? They're the best in the world for a reason, folks. And you're going to be able to have to prove that your stuff is very good, but also very controllable. And that's always the best thing. So you're always going to be constantly figuring out his great slider is nasty, just pure filth. I love his slider. And you kind of saw that on demand or on display with that Josh Naylor attempted swing. I think I made the joke that it was kind of like me trying to swat a snake with a canoe paddle. It very much reminded me of that. But his slider is nasty. He was only hitting about 94, 96 last night, where I think his usual sitting point is like 95, 97. So maybe he was trying to contain those emotions a little bit too much. Or maybe he was just, that's where he's going to sit in the major league, in the majors. So we'll see how that kind of goes on. But there's only 11 pitches where he didn't throw either a slider or a fastball. And that's 2 curveballs and 9 changes. Neither one of them are expected to do very much, but they're very complimentary. They're going to throw the batters off a little bit more. But his bread and butter is going to be that fastball and that slider combination. So you're always gonna be like walking the line of control and stuff with Daniel Lynch, and I think that you kind of saw that with his first debut. What do you guys think about Daniel Lynch at that point?
Yeah, I appreciated too that he didn't give us the robot lies that a lot of guys give after their first debut. They go out there and he was like, he just admitted that he was just so jacked up. Like he said he couldn't see, which seems like a bad thing if you're trying to pitch baseballs and not be able to see.
Sure.
So I mean, I think that's totally fair. I think that's just human emotions. Everyone feels it, and some of them lie to you afterwards and say that they didn't feel it and it was just another game. But total bullshit. But
Yeah.
he went out there and he felt those jitters. And knowing, after he admitted after the game how much of those he felt and how much they were affecting him, to know that he didn't get completely just manhandled out there, I think that's a promising sign. Because, like you said, the stuff has always been there. That's why he's such a high prospect. He's got the tools. So I think once he kind of settles down and gets more of like comfortable with this role and comfortable pitching at the big leagues, I mean, he could get nasty if he starts locating those nasty pitches like he's gotten. And it's exciting. I mean, watching last night, people asked, well, what did you think about it? And it's like, it was okay. I mean, he's got the stuff, but he probably wasn't locating where he wanted to. He wasn't blowing guys away like you'd love to see a prospect come in and just immediately blow away Jose Ramirez and Franmil Reyes. That's what everyone wants to see. It's just not likely. He's still got to figure out how to attack guys like that and work on that control, get those jitters calmed down, and get more to just what he's natural at.
Not to mention that strike zone was trash.
Yeah, that's true.
That the defense picked him up early and throughout this whole night too. That had to be a welcome sight to see some major league defense in center field after the first ball that was hit for him. So,
True.
Oh, this is what really good center field play helps you do. That's nice. I like
That's
defense.
Right. Good point.
And they jumped on those early fastballs too. Sons of bitches. It's playing dirty. Why don't you give him a grace period, you dicks? I love to see Daniel Lynch debuting. Obviously, I think the entire Royals kingdom was very excited about that. But him debuting is kind of an indicator of what I'm more excited about. And I'm more excited about that this is yet another message of this. It's time to go. Like, this is what we're here. We are in a position to take control and be contenders and open this window and smash that door down. And I think that's the big indicator to me that I'm jacked up about, is that this is more evidence of the Royals organization as a team, as an organization, as a coaching staff from top to bottom, feeling it in their bones that it's time to go. And I'm pumped and jacked up about that because I have missed watching fun baseball. And these Royals have not lived up to what they're even capable of. As of last week, they had two guys above 230 hitting, and now we don't have Mondesi. Hunter Dozier has been absent for most of the year. He's starting to turn it on a little bit more. Jorge Soler has not been Jorge Soler that we know. It's time to go, and they've found success outside of those guys. We talked about a little bit about last week that they're just finding ways to win outside of everything clicking one night. It's a starter picking up. It's Danny Duffin shoving for 7 innings of no hit, no earned run ball. It's the offense exploding for 14 runs. It's the bullpen shutting door on a 3-2 game. It's different ways to win games, whereas the last few years have just been different ways to lose games. The Royals could have done plenty of things to avoid starting the clock on Daniel Lynch's service time. Their reason for calling up was to get better at the back of the bullpen because it'd been a little shaky with Holland, been a little shaky with Barlow. Wade Davis has been not at all what Wade Davis is, what Royals fans kind of think of him as. But Jesse Hahn's still on the IL. Kyle Zimmer hit the IL. They decided to move Jake Junis to the pen, who had been shoving in the Royals rotation. Maybe if you subscribe to the Baseball Savant StatCast numbers, you could think that, this is just the Royals kind of getting ahead of him getting blown up in the rotation. He was getting hit hard. So they moved Junis to the back of the bullpen. You can still, throw Lovelady out there. You can get a spot start from Irv Santana. You still have a 5-man rotation of Duffy, Miner, Keller, Singer, and Bubich at that point. If you need a spot starter, you get Irv Santana. You can call up Rich Lovelady. You can call us Carlos Hernandez. You can call us Ronald Bolaños without having to make a 40-man move where they did here. And they said, no, damn that. It's time for Daniel Lynch to get up here and start cutting his teeth type of thing. And that, along with all the things that they've done, they signed Carlos Santana, they signed Mike Miner, they traded for Benny Benintendi, called up Singer, Bubich, and Isbell. They flirted with BWJ, Bobby Witt in spring training. They extended Salvi and Dozier. They surrounded the teams of vets like Holland Wade, Dyson, and Santana. And now they're prepping Jake Junis for the bullpen role. These are all indicators of it's time to go. The window is opening. Now is the time to start contending for this AL championship, this AL pennant, at least the AL Central. And I'm jacked up about that. Daniel Lynch is yet another indicator of where we're headed as an organization, as a fan base, and as a team. Let's go.
You didn't even mention adding Alcides Escobar to this minor league system.
Yeah. I could not believe that. That is something else.
Well, it makes total sense. I think, they don't have organizationally another shortstop guy, veteran guy that's really ready to contribute. He's just sitting around training and not really in anybody else's system. Right. So if he's willing to take a AAA role, more power to him. Let's go. Let's get this magic back.
That AAA infield is quite full with Lucius Fox, Eric Mejia. I mean, they've got dudes. Eventually, they might have one of these, Nicky Lopez. We'll see what happens with that when Mondi gets back. But it's going to be a little jam-packed out there, so I'm curious to see what happens to the Alcides Escobar and Omaha type of situation.
Yep, I'm looking forward to it because they were talking before the game tonight about how the Omaha pitching staff is not your typical AAA pitching staff that usually has some journeymen in there that aren't good enough to be on the majors. They've got legit young arms that are ready to break down the door and come up at any time they're ready. And it's pretty much the same way with the field guys. I mean, Bubba Starling, kind of a different player. McBroom is they're kind of the veterans of that, Omaha infield, outfield. So, I mean, there's exciting guys at every level of the minors ready to come through. It's an exciting time to be a Royals fan.
I think I saw Jackson Coar debut at Omaha tonight. Went 5 1/3, 2 hits, no earned with 9 Ks.
That'll do.
That'll do for Jackson Coar in Omaha. AAA. Yep. That'll do. Speaking of that'll do it for us for this awesome episode of the Clearing Waivers podcast. Shout out to Craig Stout. Go check him out on the Kansas City Sports Network, the KC Laboratory, also on Twitter at Barley Hop. You can find all of us on Twitter separately, but also at Clearing Waivers. We're also on Twitter. We also would love to talk to you guys a little bit about what we've talked about this week. Go share it with a friend. Go subscribe. Go like us. We appreciate all the support. We're going to take it as validation, maybe false validation, but we appreciate all the support regardless. Even if it's don't do any of that and just listen to us ramble into these microphones. Greatly appreciate everything you guys do for us. But for Kitty and Brian and myself, we appreciate you one more time. Ta-ta for now.